We begin the day with the battle for control in eastern parts of Democratic Republic of Congo. The UN says its peacekeepers are engaged in intense fighting there against rebel forces. Now, in recent weeks, M23 fighters have captured key towns in one of Sub-Saharan Africa's most mineral-rich regions close to the border with Rwanda. They're now closing in on the city of Goma. The UK, United States, and France are all urging citizens to leave the city, home to more than 1 million people.
Soldiers and armored vehicles from DR Congo's army on their way to the front line, just 10 kilometers from the provincial capital Goma. They've lost swathes of territory since the M23 rebels launched a renewed offensive in recent weeks. They're now surrounded on all sides. As the rebels encircle the city, people are fleeing. The latest insurgence has triggered a humanitarian crisis, displacing 400,000 people in just weeks. Goma is already home to hundreds of thousands of displaced Congolese.
The atmosphere here is bad, very tense, and fear is spreading. Children aren't in school anymore, and we can't leave. This war situation is really threatening the lives of all inhabitants.
Curious onlookers rush to a hill overlooking the front line. The Congolese army has been firing volleys of rockets from helicopters at the rebel fighters below. But the rebels have anti-aircraft defenses from neighboring Rwanda. The UN accuses Rwanda of fueling the insurgency with its own troops and weapons. Analysts say Rwanda is trying to gain influence in the region by backing the rebels. The M23 group has extended its foothold to large areas of eastern DRC over the last few years, a region rich in resources including gold and minerals used in electronics. Hundreds of people wounded in the fighting are brought to a hospital in Goma. This is not the first time the city is under threat. M23 briefly managed to take Goma in 2012, prompting international donors to cut aid to Rwanda. In December last year, efforts by Angola to mediate failed. And on Friday, Turkey's president hosted his Rwandan counterpart in a bid to de-escalate tensions.
We appreciate Rwanda's valuable contributions to establishing stability and security in East Africa and the Great Lakes region. We hope that the conflict with the Democratic Republic of the Congo will be resolved through peaceful methods.
For those caught up in the fighting, a peaceful resolution cannot come fast enough. But the UN is concerned the latest violence could be a precursor to a regional war.
We can speak to Bruno Lemarquis, resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator for the United Nations in the DRC. He joins us from the capital, Kinshasa. Welcome. UN peacekeepers have been engaged in combat with M23 rebels in the last 24 hours. The rebels are said to be closing in on Goma. What more can you tell us about this?
So good evening, and thank you for inviting me. Over the past 24 hours, the UN peacekeeping in the Democratic Republic of Congo, called MONUSCO, its peacekeepers have been actively engaged in intense combat alongside the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo to counter the advance of the armed group called M23 that is closing in around Goma. The UN peacekeeping operation MONUSCO has been also repositioning some of its forces to strategic defensive location around Goma to defend the city of Goma, to strengthen protection for civilians and also to protect critical infrastructure.
Tell us a little bit about why, excuse me for jumping in, I'm curious why Goma is such an important city to protect, that you're moving peacekeepers around to make sure it doesn't fall into rebel hands.
Well, Goma is a very important city in eastern DRC. It's the capital. It's a 1 million people city. It's the capital city of the province of North Kivu. It's a strategic location. It's at the border with Rwanda. and so it's a very strategic location where most of the MONUSCO forces are located in Goma.
And at this stage, how concerned are you about the city falling into rebel hands, given that there are more than 1 million people who live there?
So the population of Goma is 1 million people, and there are also 700,000 displaced people who have been living in the vicinity of Goma since the resurgence of the armed group M23 around 3 years ago. With the recent fighting over the past few days and the advances that the M23 has made near the city of Goma, many of those displaced people, hundreds of thousands of these displaced people, have come even closer to the city of Goma. They are under very, very difficult conditions, with a lot of protection risk for the civilian population. Everything is done by the Congolese government, the Congolese armed forces, with the support of MONUSCO, and also the regional force of the SADC, the Southern African community, to protect the city of Goma.
Now, I understand that formal camps for those displaced people are already full. Where are people taking shelter?
So if we talk, because there are many humanitarian situations in Eastern DRC, in total there are 6.5 million people who are internally displaced in Congo, mostly due to conflict in Eastern DRC. Recently, with the advances of the M23 group, not only around Goma, but also for the first time in South Kivu, many people are again on the road, on the move, as we can see in the picture. When it comes to the displaced people around the city of Goma, many of them, as I said, have moved towards the city of Goma because there is the territory in which they were living is shrinking because of this M23 offensive. Many of them are living with the host community. Host community are incredibly generous in Congo when it comes to hosting displaced people. So they are moving. It's a very, very tense situation. It's a very complicated situation with all those displaced people coming in. The humanitarian community is fully mobilized, but it's a difficult operating theater with many challenges we are facing. I want to take the opportunity to again remind all parties to the conflict to respect international humanitarian law. Civilians should never be a target. Civilian infrastructure should never be a target. There has been multiple attacks against civilian infrastructure lately, including health infrastructure. I also want to point out, even as of today, I just came back from Goma this afternoon. The number of injured people have really increased.
Thank you for joining us to share those comments. I'm so sorry, we're just run out of time, but we very much appreciate you taking the time, especially under these circumstances. We've been speaking to Bruno Lemarquis, the UN resident coordinator in the DRC. Thanks once again.
Thank you very much.